New, improved Eucharist. They got to do something. They got to. Sales are off. We're not buying it. We're not buying this bread is Jesus thing. Only 30% of Catholics believe that the Eucharist is Jesus Christ. We have a marketing problem, so the bishops have a 3-year plan they're implementing to help us. Well, it's a renewal of our Eucharistic belief, Eucharistic Revival. Welcome to Men's Morning Lights. I'm Trapper Jack, and it was day one of our trip to Medjugorje recently. My wife and I were at Mass, packed Mass and everything, and there's this great priest over there. He's the chaplain for English-speaking folks. His name is Father Leon. And Father Leon throws a question at us, really interesting question. This is before Mass even begins because the place is so packed. He's doing a little mini homily, and he says, which is better, Eucharistic adoration or serving the poor? He says, don't answer out loud. Just think about it. Which is better, Eucharistic adoration or serving the poor? And you start thinking, wow, sitting there with Jesus or being the hands and feet of Jesus. Mm-hmm. And he says, I'll tell you what Mother Teresa said. She said, without Eucharistic adoration, I couldn't do what I do for 1 week. That's how powerful it is. It is the force that makes everything else happen. Which reminds me of the story of the sister that was working with Mother Teresa. And she said, I don't have time. I don't have time for adoration. We're all busy, right? I don't have time to stop at the church and be there with Jesus. And I just don't have the time. And sister said, okay, if you don't have time to spend 1 hour with Jesus, then spend 2 hours with Jesus. Because you're not getting this, that this is the force and the power that makes this all work. And then Father Leon said that most of the miracles that happen at Medjugorje in Bosnia-Herzegovina happen during Eucharistic adoration. Say what? Oh, you can't leave it there, Father. You got what? Like healing stories and stuff? Then you got to tell me that, because the bishops are trying to convince us that that's Jesus, the same Jesus that walked this earth 2,000 years ago. So if you're going to say that, you got to tell me how, what are the stories here? Document your stories, because this reminds me of something that a sister told me at our local Our Lady of Lourdes shrine. She said over at Our Lady of Lourdes, of course, all those wonderful healings that involve the water, right? She said, actually, there are more healings involving the Eucharist. Wait a minute, what, really? The Eucharist? And again, you got to tell me stories, because the bishops need this kind of ammo, do they not? If you're going to convince me that that's Jesus Christ, and this has to be some sort of miraculous, truly super substantial bread, as St. Jerome called it. Isn't it? You know? When Jesus walked around 2,000 years ago, we're not reading that he looked at the woman who had been hemorrhaging for 11 years, 12 years, whatever it was. He didn't just look at her and say, love you, and walk off. Hey, leper, love you. I mean it. Hey, withered hand guy. No, he performed miracles. He healed. And you're telling me that that Eucharist is Jesus Christ? Then apparently that Eucharist still, this is ammo for the bishops, is it not? I want to hear those stories. Now, shortly before being in Medjugorje, we were in Rome, Elizabeth and I, and on day number 1 there, I'm having this conversation. Actually, we're both having this conversation with God, and I'm saying, how can this be better? This, which is better? How can this be better, God? We were scheduled to be on a bus trip that was going to go all around Italy, all these wonderful Catholic sites of Eucharistic miracles, of where Padre Pio was. Let's see, what else? St. Michael the Archangel's Cave, all these really cool places we were supposed to go. And I won't give you the long, boring details of why we didn't end up on the bus. Well, we didn't end up on the bus, and he was the reason why. He didn't want us on the bus. And we're sitting there we're saying to ourselves, what could be better? What could be better than being on that bus, going to all those great sites and coming back with all those wonderful stories? What could be better? And I've told you how songs bubble up in my head seemingly out of nowhere, and we know where that nowhere is. A song started playing in my head. Billy Joel. Don't ask me why. That song says, okay. Then bells start ringing. Apparently there's a church real close to our Airbnb. I mean, really close. They are loud bells. You hear bells all over Rome, and obviously we're very close to a church. So I open up on my phone my Mass app, and I go, oh, we got a church that's something like maybe a 1/10 of a mile away. So the next day, we head out, and sure enough, there is, it's called Our Lady in the Little Valley. And we get there kind of late for one Mass. We do receive communion, but then these 3 priests, English-speaking, American English-speaking priests, come in, and they're starting to put on their vestments, they're getting the chalice, and it's like we engage in conversation. Oh, you're from Atlanta, we're from Cleveland, right? And hey, we're about to celebrate Mass. We're doing it over on that altar over there. Would you like to go? Yeah. How cool is that? We even got a homily. There's only 5 of us on the altar, 3 priests and Beth and I. Oh, and then there, and a saint. Entombed in that altar is a saint, Philip Neri. Now my head's exploding, because what are the odds that the entombed saint is the patron saint of our pastor back in our home parish? It's like, wow, this takes us right to him, takes us right to our parish. It's like, this isn't a coincidence. This is God speaking. We're starting to understand why we're not on the bus. We don't know why yet, but there's a reason why we're not on that bus, and it involves the Eucharist. The only story I really know about Father Philip Neri, St. Philip Neri, is the one often told about the Eucharist. It's communion time. A woman comes up. She's at the rail. The Eucharist is placed on her tongue, and she did something nobody did 500 years ago. Nobody do it now, but not 500 years ago, where she took the Eucharist, and she didn't go back to the pew. She just headed out the door. Well, you didn't do that back then, and it freaked out St. Philip Neri. And he tells the altar boy, take your candle, the lit one, take your candle and follow her. She is a walking tabernacle. In other words, Jesus is in her right now, physically present. Go be with her. She's, for the next several minutes, she truly has Christ within her. So go. Amazing story. That's the reverence, that's the belief that Philip Neri had, that is Jesus Christ inside of her, right? Okay, so again, we're talking Eucharist here, right? We're talking Eucharist. And this reminds me a little bit of the visionary. She lives in Mexico. Her name is Catalina Rivas. And she talked about how when she saw Jesus, she spoke to him and she said, when we receive communion, we hear that you're with us physically 10 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes. How long are you actually with us? And Jesus said to her, I'm not the one who leaves. Isn't that a great answer? I'm not the one who leaves. Eucharist. Next day, we're at St. Peter's Basilica. We're at Mass, beautiful Mass with there's a choir going, and it's just gorgeous. And we know, actually, I don't see it, but again, Beth sees something that we think is kind of unusual. For us, anyway. There is someone, let's call him an usher, that is stationed strategically, perfectly, so that now a lot of people are receiving on the tongue, but at communion, for those receiving in the hand, these ushers are watching to make sure that the person consumes immediately. Because if they don't, they're walking up to them and saying, excuse me, please consume the Eucharist. That's Jesus. So there's absolutely no disrespect towards the Eucharist. There's no just walking it back to the pew. And no. The ushers are there to make sure that it's consumed immediately. Interesting. Because we were recently talking to a friend of ours at the parish, and she was talking about how she has seen teenagers at our Masses. This one particular came to mind where she received the Eucharist, and then she just walked the Eucharist back to her pew, picks up her phone, checks for notifications or something, and then before popping the host into her mouth. Now, is that somebody who truly believes that that's Jesus Christ? Probably not. But if you place an usher there, an usher that says, excuse me, please consume, now the mindset is starting to change, isn't it? And isn't that what the bishops have to do for the next 3 years? Change the mindset that really is Jesus Christ. Put an usher there. It's an important, I know I've seen priests, track down people, but they're not going to catch everybody, are they? They're not quite sure. But that's what they have done at St. Peter's Basilica, okay? What they do at Medjugorje is really interesting inside St. James Church. There, and I assume this is why they're doing this, the people don't process up for communion. The priest comes to them. How do they do that? Well, when you're coming out of the pews, everyone's splitting, going to your side of the, open side. But as you go to the end of the pew to come out, instead of processing up, let's say I would come out and I would go right, and my wife would come out and take a step to the left, and the person behind me is going to take a step to the middle, and maybe there's someone else kind of. Anyway, you're all kind of squeezed in, kind of scrunched in there, and then the priests come down the aisle, going back and forth to each side of the pews, and giving you communion. Most people receiving again on the tongue out of respect and out of reverence. But even if you have your hand out, you're not going anywhere, and everyone's watching you. Everyone can see whether or not you're consuming. So there's a protection there that you're all kind of scrunched in together, receiving communion. You can't run away with it. We've all heard the horror stories of black masses where people are taking the Eucharist to satanic things and desecrating the host. You can't do that in this scenario. It's all scrunched, and then you slowly kind of file back into your pew. It's kind of built-in respect there, right? And reverence and protection. Okay, next, here's another reason why we're not on the bus. Everything's about not being on the bus. I'm getting the which is better, which is better, which is better. So we now go on to we're going on to Assisi in Italy, and we go into Saint Clare of Poor Clare's fame, because that's where the actual Saint Francis of Assisi, the crucifix is, the cross is there, the one that spoke to Francis saying, "Go rebuild my church." And isn't that where the bishops are now? 30% believers? Can't stand. It keeps drifting down. Something's got to give here. This is a rebuilding of what we know as the source and summit, the Eucharist, right? Okay, so this is our rebuilding time. But while we're in Assisi, we also go into St. Mary Major. This is where Carlo Acutis is buried. He's entombed. Carlo Acutis, the 15-year-old from Italy, died at 15, leukemia. This is the guy. He's now blessed. He'll be canonized in the near future. But this blessed Carlo Acutis is the one who has cataloged all the Eucharistic miracles, over 130, that you can download and your parish can do things with and everything. He so understood the importance of these Eucharistic miracles because they kept telling the same story, the dazzling story of the Eucharist again, of how every time that bread changes into something else after consecration, the something else is always heart tissue, and he documented it. And it's always left ventricle, the part of the heart that keeps you alive, that pumps the blood, that it's always type AB blood. And he cataloged every single Eucharistic miracle that he could before he died. It's amazing what this guy did. Why? To help other young people understand through science that the science is on our side. This is Jesus. That heart tissue, it's always all the tests keep coming back, seems to be from the same person. I wonder who. And he wanted fellow young people to understand this is Jesus. Believe this is a someone, not a something. I have never, to this day, and I'm an old guy, to this point in my life, I still have yet to be in a church where the homily was strictly about Eucharistic miracles, where this is what happened. This is what happened in this particular case or in this case. And here's Carlo Acutis giving all this information to us. It's right there. It's readily available. But it's a way, again, because do not the bishops need every piece of ammo possible to get this trend going back up again? We can't just keep saying, body, blood, soul, divinity. We can't just keep saying, go to John 6. No, we've got to give them more than that. They've heard that, and sales are off. We're not buying it. They're just not buying it. It's not Jesus. It's just a symbol, right? Just a symbol. And Carlo Acutis saying, no, we have science backing this up. This, to me, this is like if Moses, back in the day, what if Moses never said to the Israelites, what if he never mentioned that stuff that fell out of the sky every day that fed them every day? That manna from heaven, that miraculous manna from heaven. What if he never brought it up? That every day this stuff would fall out of the sky for 40 years, every day for 40 years until they reached the promised land. And just like that, until we reach the promised land of heaven, we can receive this super substantial bread, this miraculous bread from heaven. And we have these miracles to point us to the fact, science pointing us to the fact that what we believe by faith is true. And we're not using that ammo. The bishops have that ammo. Oh, while we were there, too, at this St. Mary Major, where Carlo Acutis is entombed, place was packed for this Mass. We walked in there. We weren't even sure there was going to be a Mass. And it was a Mass just starting. So upbeat, so uplifting. They're speaking Italian, singing in Italian. It's one of the favorite Masses I've ever been to. It was just filled with family, young people singing. After the Mass, everyone processed, including us, to go touch the reliquary where some part of Carlo Acutis was inside. I think it was the heart. And everyone was singing in Italian when the saints go marching in. It was like, wow, this isn't New Orleans. This is pretty cool. It was just a wonderful experience for Elizabeth and I that Carlo Acutis is right there. And by the way, he is an intercessory, too, for this Eucharistic revival that's going on right now. We are praying to him. All right, so this is why we're not on the bus. This is why. What could be better than going to all these Catholic sites, asking the question of what would be better? What is better, to have somebody just flailing around with the Eucharist on the way back to the pew, or someone to say, no, 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 consume that, would you please? It's Jesus, an usher. What could be better than having someone say to us, do you know about the miracles that happen at Lourdes that are about the Eucharist, not the water? Do you know about the miracles at Medjugorje and other places where somebody just looking at Jesus was healed of X disease? That's powerful. These are powerful messages that need to be out there, do they not? Carlo Acutis and his stories. I mean, my gosh, this is why we're not on the bus. This is all part of the mindset that needs to happen, does it not? For the next 3 years to bring us something a little different. I'll tell you the moment that I no longer could receive communion in my hand. I mean, I have it on occasion if somebody, if like an EM or somebody just doesn't look too secure, I will. But this is the moment that for me, it has to be on the tongue from now on, if at all possible. And it happened here locally at St. Stephen's Church. It was a Latin Mass. Everything is so sacred at a Latin Mass. The music, everything is veiled. It's gorgeous. There's the communion rail. And I'm kneeling down in the music, and it's, the smells and bells, the incense and the bells ringing, and it's just so reverent and it's just so sacred. And then once I received on the tongue there, it's like that. This is the right way for me. This is the right way. In fact, Pope Paul VI said that still should be the way. But back in his day, back in the late 60s, there was a lot of pushback. A lot of pushback. It had to do with Vatican II and all kinds of things. A lot of pushback that, no, we should receive on the hands. We can do that too. There's some history in that as well. And he said, okay, if you want to, but there is a way to do it. And by the way, we're not doing it. What do we see? The teaching usually is, there's your throne, and Jesus sits on the throne, and we take our other hand and we do it. That's not the way we're supposed to be receiving it. The way we're supposed to be receiving it is like this, and then it's placed in your hand, and then like that, so that there are fewer fragments and less chance of dropping. It goes in the hand and then right to the mouth. Did you know that? I didn't know that, not until recently. There's a friend of mine who has at times thought about becoming a priest. He's still of the age where he could. And I think this is why God gave him a vision in case he did go down this route. He got a little lesson on communion rails and tongue versus hand and priests versus EMs and all that. And keep in mind, this is still which is better, not which is bad. Eucharistic ministers are not bad. They're good. God bless you. A lot of my friends and family are Eucharistic ministers. Hallelujah. You've been asked to do something and you're doing it. That's great. However, which is better? And this friend of mine got this vision. In the vision, he saw why there was this huge fall off in vocations to become priests. And it had to do with little Billy looking up at the priest, as he was the only one. He used to be the only one touching the Eucharist, the only one distributing the communion. And now he was looking up to, Joe Blow and Joanne Blow. And it's like it didn't hit him the same. And so fallen chances of vocations to the priesthood just weren't there. That stimuli, that inspiration wasn't there, and they didn't become priests. And Jesus was showing my friend, this is why the fall off. This is one of the big reasons. So it's not, is this bad over here? No, just which is better. And he saw the fall off in belief in the Eucharist being Jesus Christ. Why? Well, once we were on our knees, now we're standing, taller than Jesus, actually, right? There's it in front of us. Once it was just on the tongue only, and now no, and now we can walk back with it. And it's just, and the Eucharistic ministers, because we were told, well, it's the age of the laity, and it's like, where did that come from? Who says? Did Jesus say that? Which is more sacred? Which is better? And all of this kept coming back to which is better. There were weeks we were on vacation, and every day there was some form of which is better, knowing that miracles happen just by sitting in front of a Eucharist, knowing that miracles happen at Lourdes, miraculous healings happen just by receiving the Eucharist or looking at. These are good things to know, are they not? Good to know. Which is better, knowing this or not knowing this? Which is better for the bishops to use as ammo, right? So recently, just a few days ago, we were watching a priest give a 21-minute homily online about some of what I've talked about. And at the end of the 21 minutes, he finally did the sales pitch, if you will, and said, so maybe you should consider, maybe you could consider that you move also from receiving on the hand, not to say that you're dirty in any way, but just because that is the way and has been the way for most of our 2,000 years, and it is the most reverent way. At the end, he said, maybe you could consider receiving on the tongue as the most reverent way, that this is God. And after I received on the tongue at St. Stephen's, it was like, I have no business touching. That's what it felt like to me. I just have no business touching. Maybe, he said, maybe you could consider receiving on the tongue. And you know what happened in that church when he finished up? Applause. Big applause, sustained applause. Because we love our shepherds who are guiding us and leading us to a more holy, a better relationship with Jesus Christ. That we are tabernacles, you know. Applause at the end of a homily. Wow. Sustained applause because we love our shepherds who guide us. In fact, I was talking recently to a pastor who said if he had one thing he could change, it would be that everyone receive on the tongue. Great, that's awesome. Now go tell someone, right? Go tell someone. Which is better? Eucharistic adoration or serving the poor? Mother Teresa, the best at serving the poor, gave us the answer. Which is better, knowing just that at Lourdes, water heals, or the fact that the Eucharist heals even more? Which is better? What do people need to know for the bishops to sell that this is Jesus Christ? Because sales are off. Which is better, to know that at Medjugorje and other places, adoration, just looking at Jesus, heals. More miracles happen there than anywhere else in Medjugorje. Remarkable. And when you're there, thousands of people gather behind the church, thousands in silent prayer and Eucharistic adoration. It's phenomenal to be there under the stars and just feeling that worship and what the Eucharist is doing in that moment. Which is better, going back to your pew, carrying it around, or having someone there to say, no, sorry, consume now. That's Jesus Christ. Which is better? Better to have only the priest touch the Eucharist, to show, to have that connect to the mind, the mindset, this is God we're dealing with, the mindset that this is Jesus Christ, and that the priest is the only one to touch and to place within your mouth. The priest who got the applause said, come on, admit it. Admit it. Haven't you at one time or another wanted to open your mouth up to a priest and stick out your tongue? This is your chance. This is your chance. Which is better, right? Which is better? To understand what Carlo Acutis is trying to tell us, from the grave he's telling us, through this wonderful demonstration of Eucharistic miracles and all of them, he's trying to tell us that science is with us because God created the science. Beautiful lesson for all of us, especially young people. Which is better? That's the question. I'll leave you with that. And I thank you for watching and listening and giving some ponderance to what we're talking about here today. Which is better? God bless you. Oh, and that's why we weren't on the bus. See you next week on Men's Morning Light.